Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Accutron Spaceview 2020 reference 2ES6A006. This watch is widely available from your local Accutron stockist and also from wearandsons.ie for €3,750. Accutron have a rich brand heritage. In 1960, Bulliver released the first Accutron, which is an iconic piece. It was the world's first tuning fork electronic watch. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a plastic watch box, which is housed inside an outer black cardboard box, and that outer black cardboard box is protected in shipping by this white cardboard sleeve. So one removes the sleeve, and this is the outer watch box itself. On the lid, we have the tuning fork emblem and Accutron logo in gilt. So one removes the lid, pulls down the flap, and I'll take out the watch box and show it to you. In the base of the outer box, we have a foam panel with a cutout which houses the items which I'll show you. So, chocolate brown, grained finish. This looks like a solid wooden watch box, but it's actually made from plastic, which is wood effect. On the lid, we have the tuning fork emblem and Accutron logo in gilt. And on the front, we have the same again, and also gilt trim around the edge. So very aesthetically pleasing. And it does give visually the impression of a solid wooden watch box. We've also got gilt hinges, which are metal. Good attention to detail, because on the base we have contrasting green felt. The felt looks aesthetically pleasing, but it also serves a purpose. It prevents the plastic watch box sliding around on a polished or lacquered desktop and scuffing and scratching it. So, does look very good. Hinge lid is spring loaded, and the interior is fully upholstered with contrasting chocolate brown material, and you can see on the underside of the hinge lid we have the Accutron tuning fork emblem and Accutron logo, and also in the base we've got wood effects with gilt trim, and the watch sits on a padded pillow cushion which is velour upholstered to a good standard, as you can see. So the watch is a snug fit on the cushion, and the cushion itself is a snug fit in the cutout. Excellent presentation, so immediately one gets the impression that the Accutron Spaceview 2020 is a high quality piece. With regards to the items that come with the piece, this is the guarantee certificate. So it details the terms and conditions of the 5-year limited guarantee. To get 5 years of international warranty or guarantee on a mid-tier piece between €500 and €5,000 is exceptional. To clarify, the industry standard for mid-tier pieces between €500 and €5,000 respectively is 2 years of international warranty. To get 5 years guarantee or warranty is exceptional. On the reverse, there's space to fill in the serial number, model number, date of purchase, the retailer's name and address, country and the owner's name. Also details the website of the official brand website, accutronwatch.com. But as I've detailed, this piece is also available from wearandsons.ie for €3,750. One also gets this owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement. And lastly, one also gets this plastic tag which has the tuning fork emblem and Accutron logo embossed. And inside it has the QR code which can be scanned with an Android or iPhone, the full reference number for the piece, and also the barcode for the piece. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 43.5mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 51mm, a thickness of 16.3mm, and a lug width of 22mm. The bracelet tapers from 22mm at the lugs down to 20mm at the 2-button push butterfly clasp. The butterfly clasp is signed with both the tuning fork emblem and Accutron logo with high definition engraving. 2-button push triggers are mirror polished and solid 316L grade stainless steel. No sharp edges to the 2-button push triggers to the butterfly clasp, and the bracelet is very well finished in both brushed satin finishing and also mirror polishing. We have a box top hat style double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating, and the clear anti-reflective coating on the underside does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the beveled skeletonized bridges to the movement. The white hand contrasts very well with a skeletonized dial, and also the red contrasting second hand also contrasts very well. One detail I like about it is the transparent chapter ring with white minute ticks and large circles which are inlaid with C3 superluminova. Also the white handset is fully inlaid with C3 superluminova, which we'll test in the Lume test. So we have the turbines, and you can see they add interest to this skeletonized dial, and I like the futuristic or sci-fi look to it, and also from a purist Boulevard collector or purist Boulevard Accutron collector's perspective, this does look visually similar to the original Accutron, which was released in 1960, which is iconic. So it's nice to see the design elements of the turbines and also the skeletonized bridges. In terms of finishing, the bridges are finished to a very high tier level, although this is a mid-tier piece at €3,750. What I like is the quality of the mirror polishing to the bevels on the bridges above the turbines, because that is done to a very high level. Also like the bridges to the movements because they are anodized in a green tone which has a metallic sheen to it. Very aesthetically pleasing. Just bear with me, I'm going to move the minutes hand out of the way. So you can see the applied gilt tuning fork emblem is mirror polished to a flawless standard, and beneath it we have Accutron in white text, which is printed with high definition printing. Quality of the printing of the white minute ticks on the transparent chaptering is excellent. They're clearly legible, but also it does visually look very aesthetically pleasing. I like the anthracite sheen to the satin finishing to the movement itself, which sits beneath the skeletonized bridges, and I like the contrast between the anodized green bridges to the movements, which replaces a dial effectively, and also the bridges which are above the turbines. So it's a very interesting piece to look at due to the turbines and also the skeletonization. I really like the sci-fi or futuristic look of it, and also like the heritage aspect of it does look visually similar to the original 1960 Boulevard Accutron. Box top hat double dome sapphire crystal does add significant thickness to the piece. It adds 2mm of thickness. Now this is something to be mindful of. It's 16.3mm, so yes, it is a tall piece, and needless to say, at 43.5 it's a large diameter piece, so it does wear with wrist presence, which I'll show you in the wrist shots. On a positive note, the solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel is mirror polished to perfection. It's a flat profile bezel versus being a domed profile, and I really like it. I think they've made the correct decision by using a flat profile bezel versus domed, because it matches the angular profile of the angular lugs. Quality of the mirror polishing is excellent, and I like the way the box top hat double dome sapphire crystal projects above it with a rather high dome profile. This does give the piece a vintage aesthetic, rather like an acrylic, plexiglass or Hesselite domed crystal which were used in the 1960s. And of course one has to be mindful of, this isn't a heritage reissue of that piece, albeit it is the direct descendant of it from 2020, 60 years later. So quality of the stainless steel bezel is finished very well. Head of the piece has interesting finishes because we have mirror polishing to the front of the angular lugs and also the tips of the lugs, and the flanks are also mirror polished. Now that contrasts with a vertical brushed satin finishing to the flanks of the case, which has a curved profile, and this does delete some of the meat. Also, visually it looks aesthetically pleasing because they've deleted some of the meat on the slab-sided flanks by having this large mirror polished bevel machined into the undercuts of the flanks. So this does reduce some of the heft to enhance comfort level and feel good factor, but visually it also makes it look more aesthetically pleasing because it is a thick piece. But the flanks do not look too tall and slab-sided because they're vertically brushed satin finished versus being longitudinally brushed satin finished, and the large mirror polished bevels on the undercuts delete a lot of the slab sides. And looks very aesthetically pleasing. I like the case shape. 22mm is the correct lug width for a large head of the piece, 43.5. For example, had they used the other industry standard 20mm lug width, that would have been undersized for a large 43.5 head of the piece. The crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished, nice large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth, mirror polished cap to it, and it is signed with an embossed tuning fork emblem to a good standard, correctly proportioned. The crown is large enough to be grippy and tactile, it's easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb, but it's not too large, it doesn't project too far proud of the right hand flank of the case. So to clarify, although it's a large case at 43.5, that's a given, the crown does not look oversized as per a dive watch crown on a daily wear piece. So when you flex the wrist, the crown doesn't dig into the back of the hand, that's the point I'm making. It's a push-pull crown versus a screw-down crown, which is acceptable for a daily wear piece, and it provides 50 metres of hermetic seal. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. It's a no-date complication piece, so pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position, and if you look at the contrasting red second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead, so therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second because it does have hacking. So we're now in the time setting position. Feels very smooth, light resistance to it. So in terms of how it feels lighter than a Seiko NH35A and lighter than a Miyota 9015, also lighter than a Sellita SW200-1. Clockwise and anti-clockwise feels smooth, doesn't feel too stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, and I like the smoothness of it. It feels nice and refined, it's got a very light feeling to it, but despite it being light in terms of resistance, it has minimal backplate in the gearing. You don't need to take up a lot of slack. For example, with quartz calibers, often one has to take up a lot of slack in the gearing. This isn't the case with this movement. You can feel that it's nice and refined. The gearing meshes very well. Feels smooth, doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, but feels light, although it does feel precise. So pleasant to set the time. Pushing the crown back in reinstates the 50 meters of hermetic seal, and it feels smooth. So setting the time works well, hacking works well, and you can see the motor and the turbines continue to run, and that adds interest to the dial. So let's look at the bracelet in detail. We've got contrast of finishing with the bracelet because we've got mirror polish links and also brushed satin finish links. Quality of the mirror polishing is excellent. Quality of the brushed satin finishing is excellent. Beautiful luster to the brushed satin finishing. And also on the flanks we've got contrasting mirror polishing, and that complements the tips of the angular lugs, which are also mirror polished on the edges. So excellent quality finishing. What I like about it is it doesn't pull arm hairs, so it's comfortable. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. Let's check the articulation. End links articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefits. They don't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side or up and down play. Friction interference fit is good. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, end link articulates freely. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. Doesn't have excess play. Let's check the bracelet articulation. Articulates freely. Pleasant surprise. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. I'll check the other side for continuity. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, it's fluid, but nonetheless, it's not a sloppy bracelet. It doesn't rattle, it doesn't have excess play, and they've done a very good job of it because it uses split pin push pins versus pin and collars rather than screw pins, but it's nice and tight. Pleasant surprise to see split pins used in a bracelet like this rather than screw pins, but actually feels like a screw pin bracelet because they've tightened up the tolerances well. So although it articulates freely without being too stiff or kinking, it doesn't feel sloppy, it's not loose. And I like that it's been deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges and doesn't pull arm hairs. So 2-button push butterfly clasp. Mirror polish triggers are correctly proportioned on the left and the right hand flank. Heavily sprung loaded so they feel reliable and robust. Internally, the butterfly clasp is solid MIL 316L grade stainless steel, flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the centre section, no sharp corners to the inner portions. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Left hand inner hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Right hand inner hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Finally, right hand outer hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Pleasant surprise. What I like about it is every facet, the top side, underside and flanks are mirror polished to the same standard. Even on the underside, the mirror polishing is excellent. 2-button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, feel reliable, feel robust, but no sharp edges, no burrs. The corners have been deburred very well and feels very good to operate, so I like it. Now it's not handed, you can close the left or the right hand portion first or last, so it doesn't overlap and the alignment is correct, and I like it signed versus being sterile with both the Accutron tuning fork emblem and also Accutron logo. Excellent. Now subjectively one could be critical because we only have one half link on the 6 side and one half link on the 12 o'clock side, but it's good to see half links nonetheless, because often the problem with butterfly clasp bracelets like this is sizing the bracelet to get the desired fits, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full link from the 6 or the 12 side respectively doesn't give the correct fit. The bracelet will feel slightly too tight or too loose, and of course if you remove one full link from a 6 or a 12 side, inevitably the 2-button push triggers or buttons on the flanks sit off centre. But by having a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 side, you can centralise the clasp. For example, if you need to remove one full link, you can remove a half link on the 6, half link on the 12 to give one full link, and that remains central. The clasp sits centre on the wrist and you can get the perfect fit. So that's good in the absence of on-the-fly adjustment with a micro adjustment clasp. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist, so just bear with me. I'm going to remove my Concord 40. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report this does come with a very long bracelet, and it will size down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 9-inch wrist size, so very long bracelets. As you can see, even on my large 8-inch wrist, I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and butterfly clasp at all times, so 9-inch plus wrist size is no problem. Now, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock side and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to reduce this down to 6-inch minimum. And one has to be mindful of the fact this is a large piece at 43.5 by 51 lug to lug. Clearly, it's intended for collectors with a larger wrist. Straight away, I would say to you, if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you can rule this piece out, because needless to say, at 43.5 by 51 lug to lug, it's going to be too large for a 6 to 7 wrist due to the angular profile of the lugs and the overhang. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, this really is a large piece. So, best suited for 7 to 8-inch plus wrist sizes, and ideally 8 inches plus. For example, if you have an 8 to 9-inch wrist, this will satisfy. Does dominate the wrist, does have wrist presence, but that's a given because it's 43.5. The thing to note is this does have significant heft. It's 188 grams. However, I'm not going to be overly critical of the heft because it does have an exceptionally long bracelet. Even on my 8-inch wrist, you can see this is far too long. This would fit up to a 9-inch plus wrist size, so needless to say, even I would remove 7 to 8 links from this bracelet. That would reduce it down to circa 165 to 170 grams. Still a heavy piece. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you would be removing the maximum 12 links from the bracelet, 6 on the 12, 6 on the 12, 6 on the 6 side, and even with a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you're going to be removing 8 to 10 links. That will reduce it down to circa 150 to 165 grams, depending on the links removed. So it is a heavy bracelet. It is a heavy head of the piece, as one would expect. Now, the one negative subjectively I want you to be mindful of, the one dimension you need to be aware of, is the thickness. This is a tall, thick piece, largely down to the box top hat double dome sapphire crystal, which adds 2mm of thickness. It is 16.3. Now, to put this into perspective, you'll know this from my previous reviews. 13mm and below is the sweet spot to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. Clearly, this is intended to be a daily wear piece rather than a dress piece. And of course, that's something to note because when a piece is above 13mm, it does make it more difficult to slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts for a daily wear piece. At 16.3, it is well in excess of the 13 sweet spot. It is 3.3 thicker. I would like to see Bulliver slim this down. For example, had they used a flat sapphire crystal versus a boxed double dome top hat style crystal, that would have reduced the thickness by 2mm, and it would still retain 50 meters of hermetic seal. But the point is, it would reduce it down from 16.3 down to 14.3, 2mm reduction simply by changing the crystal. 14.3 is still above the 13 sweet spot, but it's only marginal, 1.3 versus 3.3, so you can see the difference. Now, subjectively, Bulliver collectors and purist Bulliver Accutron collectors would argue the box top hat double dome sapphire crystal is very aesthetically pleasing because it does look true to the original from 1960. So in the 1960s, acrylic, hesselite and plexiglass were the popular crystal materials. They predated the use of mineral crystal, K1 hardened glass and of course sapphire crystal, which is now the industry standard in 2025. Visually, it does give the aesthetic of a domed acrylic crystal. So one could say, well, it does look true to the original. And although this isn't a heritage reissue of the original 1960 Bulliver Accutron, it does take design elements from it, such as the turbines, the skeletonized bridges, and of course the colour used, the green. So, yes, it does look visually similar, but of course modern day specification with sapphire crystal plus AR coating. They've got the balance correct, but I think it would look better in terms of comfort level and feel good factor. I think visually it would look better but also feel better with a flat sapphire crystal, but this is subjective. Some collectors like a box top hat crystal for the aforementioned reasons. So it is a thick piece. It doesn't feel top heavy, and that's due to the taper on the bracelet. Now, I think this would look better with the industry standard 22 to 18. So to clarify, 20 to 16 is one industry standard, 22 to 18 is the alternative industry standard. So for example, on a 39 or a 40 head of the piece, one expects to see 20 to 16, which I refer to as perfection personified. It's the ultimate taper for good reason. The other alternative for larger pieces, for example 41, 42, 43, etc., is 22 to 18. Because needless to say, if this were a 20 to 16 taper on the bracelet, it wouldn't have enough meat. Visually, it wouldn't look wide enough for a large head of the piece at 43.5. That's a given. So 22 is the correct lug width, but I don't think it's aggressive enough. 22 tapering to 20 is only 2mm of taper across the length of the bracelet. I think a 22 to 18, the industry standard taper, with more of an aggressive taper would look better. The other benefit is it would slim down the butterfly clasp, because the bracelet would be 18 at the butterfly clasp versus 20. But again, this is subjective, because some collectors like the straight parallel look of a straighter bracelet. For example, an Omega Seamaster Professional, that does have a straight bracelet, it's parallel, doesn't taper. Some collectors like that look, because it does give the piece a tall watch aesthetic rather than a dress watch aesthetic. And for a daily wear piece with a large head of the piece, yes, a straight bracelet is needed, because we do need some additional heft to balance the heavy head of the piece. So it does actually feel very well balanced, but one has to be mindful of this is a very long bracelet, so it does have a lot of meat on it. But I like the taper. The contrast of the brushed satin finishing and the mirror polishing is beautiful. Beautiful luster to it. I like that it doesn't pull arm hairs when it floats up and down the wrist. Doesn't feel scratchy. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks, which is good. Quality of the finishing is good. Visually looks good. Feels good. Articulates well. It's a fluid bracelet. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. But you can see it does have a long lug to lug. I think Accutron could have shortened this down to the sweet spot of 48. I often refer to 48mm as the perfect sweet spot lug to lug. The reason why I say that is it's the industry standard for good reason. 48 lug to lug, regardless of case size, 39, 40, 41, 42, etc. 48 is perfect for a 6 to 7 inch wrist and perfect for a 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. It's the sweet spot. At 51, it is 3mm above the sweet spot, and it really is notable. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, you can see it is a long case. Now, of course, one has to be magnanimous and say, well, yes, it's a long lug to lug, but of course it's a large piece. We're looking at a 43.5 here. We're not looking at a 39 or a 40. It really comes down to your preference. Now, of course, if you have a larger wrist, you're going to enjoy the wrist presence. You can feel the heft, which feels quality. You can also feel the wrist presence because it's long, but also a wide case. But I would say too large for a 6 to 7 inch wrist, but okay for a 7 to 8 and ideally 8 inch plus. For example, if you have an 8 to 9 inch wrist, you're going to find the fit, the wrist presence, the domination of the wrist comfortable. Looks good, feels good, vintage aesthetic due to the box top hat crystal. Legibility is surprisingly good because it does have skeletonized bridges rather than a dial, and we've got that transparent chaptering, but the large white minute ticks on the transparent chaptering are surprisingly legible. Also the large circles, which are infilled with C3, are clearly legible. The white hands contrast very well, and the contrasting red second hand contrasts very well. So legibility is very good for a skeletonized dial watch, which effectively the skeletonized bridges above the turbines and the electric motor, they become the dial. So it does look good. Visually does look similar to the original 1960 Accutron. I think they've got the balance correct in terms of vintage aesthetic, 1960s look, modern day specifications. Comfort level is good, feel good factor is good, but it is a heavy piece and of course does have large wrist presence. That's the things to bear in mind. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So just bear with me. I'm going to put back on my Concorde 40 and then we'll continue. So this uses C3 Super Luminova on the dots, on the chaptering and also on the white contrasting hands. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the circles, on the transparent chaptering, and also the white contrasting hands. What I like about it is the proportions of the hands. They don't look undersized, they're not too slender, they're not too short. One can immediately differentiate between the shorter hour hand and the longer minutes hand, so it is possible to read the time in the dark. The large circle dots, or circles of C3, on the transparent chaptering are excellent. They've done a good job because one has to appreciate this does not have applied indices on a dial as per a dive watch. It's got a transparent disc for the chaptering with white minute ticks, and it's got circles which are infilled with circle dots of C3. Credit where credit's due. It is difficult to apply 5 to 6 layers when you just simply have a transparent chaptering versus applied indices on a dial, but they've done a good job of it. Now in daylight it's got a perfect colour tone match between the circle dots on the chaptering. They look white rather than cream, and the white hands, they also look white with regards to the C3, doesn't look more cream. Colour tone match is good between the dots and also between the handset. Now in the dark the potency of the exciter looks the same. This is good. The green tone doesn't look lighter or darker on the chaptering dots or circles, and also the handset. The green tone looks the same. Same C3 used, same 5 to 6 layers used on the chaptering, same 5 to 6 used on the handset, and I like the symmetry of it. This is the benefit of this not being a date complication piece, because we've got a symmetrical dial, albeit it is skeletonized with bridges over the turbines and the motor. But the point I'm making is we don't have a date window at 6 or the default position of 3, and of course the dial therefore looks balanced. And when I say dial, I'm referring to the transparent chaptering as an alternative to a dial. But you can see perfect symmetry. We've got 12 circles or 12 dots of C3. Proportions are good. Handset proportions are good. You can easily read the time in the dark, and there is no date complication. There's no date window at 3 or 6, which would delete one of the circle dots of C3. Excellent, stellar performance, and I'm very pleased to see it. C3 is very aesthetically pleasing. It looks like tritium, which was used in the 1960s. Right, so let's discuss. Actually, first thing I need to show you before we discuss the movement is the caseback. So, forged caseback. Now, forged casebacks are my personal preference versus engraved casebacks with embossing or debossing. The reason why I like forged casebacks is they are hydraulically pressed. So, visually they look very aesthetically pleasing because the embossing and debossing is high definition. The benefit of using a forged caseback which is hydraulically pressed versus an engraved caseback is the smoothness, above all else. Now, this has a turbine detail to it, and I like the design elements because if you look around the circumference of the caseback, which is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, you can see it has this turbine engraving, and the turbine adds continuity of design because it matches the turbines on the front of the piece, as you can see, which are very aesthetically pleasing. Engraving is high definition, it's sharp, and when I say sharp I'm not referring to the roughness, I'm referring to the font and the definition. The engraving is excellent. Also, like the tuning fork is embossed, and also Accutron is embossed and mirror polished with a matte bead blasted background to it. Now, what I like about the caseback is it's not too thick. It doesn't add too much thickness to the piece, and that's good because it is 50 metres of hermetic seal, which is acceptable for a daily wear piece, but it's not a deep bubble back caseback as per an automatic piece with a rotor. I like the turbine design, and also I like the concentric CNC lathe tool machining. The outer portion or the circumference has a large chamfer which is mirror polished. That deletes the sharp edge of the caseback, so it does feel very smooth against the wrist despite being very deep with regards to the embossing. The tuning fork and the Accutron, although they're embossed very deeply, they don't feel rough, they don't scratch the wrist. So comfort level is good, feel good factor is good, and the turbine engraving is recessed. So again, that doesn't feel rough or scratch the wrist, and the engraving is very good. So they've done a very good job with the caseback, quality is good. Solid end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece, but standard stainless steel spring bars, they could upgrade this or update it to quick release stainless steel spring bars because that would negate the need for a spring bar tool to exchange the bracelet for a strap. Now, the other benefit is if they added pierced lugs, because you could depress the spring bar externally and it would give the piece a vintage aesthetic, but nonetheless, I really would like to see the update of quick release stainless steel spring bars. The problem is with a mirror polished underside to the head of the piece. Often it's the case that when you're using a spring bar tool, it's easy to slip off the spring bar and therefore scuff and scratch the mirror polishing to the tips of the lugs. By having quick release spring bars, that would negate that need. But of course, quality of the mirror polishing to the underside to the head of the piece is excellent. The tips of the full lugs have bevels which are mirror polished, no sharp corners, no sharp edges, and the undercuts to the flanks have large bevels which are mirror polished. So it feels like a very smooth, comfortable head of the piece and case back, and excellent quality finishing to the head of the piece throughout. Right, so now I'll discuss the movement used because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So, how does the Accutron work? Well, I will explain. The electrostatic energy is created as a result of human motion by twin turbines that rotate at incredible speeds between two electrodes affixed to the movement. The energy stored in a capacitor powers two motors. A world's first electrostatic motor fueling the fluid second hand, and a step motor powering the hour and minute hands. The two lower turbines on the watch dial are electrostatic generators, while the upper larger driving turbine is an electrostatic motor. An electrostatic motor uses the direct attraction and repulsion of positive and negative electrical charge. An electrostatic motor's rotor sits between the two electrodes, one of which carries a positive electrical charge and one of which carries a negative charge. As the edge of the rotor passes an electrode, it acquires a charge identical to the electrode, which pushes that part of the rotor away, like charges repel, causing the rotor to turn. This engineering technology ensures plus or minus 5 seconds monthly timekeeping accuracy. So just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 5 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 5 seconds per month is stellar accuracy, better than plus or minus 1 second per day. And I can confirm this one is running to better than plus or minus 5 seconds per month. 0 seconds per day accuracy. It is incredible. And another aspect I like is the incredibly smooth sweep to the red second hand. So this movement also features the following: electrostatic power generation with power storage in a lithium metal rechargeable capacitor. So as an alternative to a battery, the energy is stored in the capacitor. Daily wear, defined as 1 hour of walking, should maintain power reserve at full charge and will generate enough static electricity to ensure the capacitor is fully recharged. Now it's important to note the second hand may not be sweeping most of the time. This movement has a power saving function. The fluid motion of the second hand, powered by an electrostatic motor, the world's first in a timepiece, will stop at 12 o'clock if the watch does not sense adequate motion within a 5-minute time span. This is called a power save function, and it will activate while the watch is worn, for example while driving, while on the phone, or working with a laptop, etc. Like other electronic devices, power saving mode is essential in extending the life of the capacitor in the electrostatic movement. The power save function can be cancelled when the wearer wants to look at the motion of the second hand or motor turbine. Even when the second hand stops at 12 o'clock in power save function, the electrostatic induction generators continue to convert energy of small motion into power, recharging the capacitor. So, to start the second hand moving, you simply swing your arm up and down in a chopping motion. This motion will start the electrostatic motor that drives the second hand. So, above all else, what I like about it is the accuracy, as I've detailed. Plus or minus 5 seconds per month is stellar accuracy, and it's just incredible. The other positive benefit that I really like is this is not battery powered, it's capacitor powered, so therefore one doesn't need to charge a battery. It's simply charged up by moving your wrist when you wear the watch daily. So not only is it incredibly accurate at plus or minus 5 seconds per month, it also doesn't need battery changes because it's capacitor powered. That's the benefit. Excellent. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So mid-tier piece, and to remind you, mid-tier is €500 to €5,000 respectively. This is €3,750. I'm going to declare it excellent quality, and I'm going to declare it okay value. The reason why I say it's okay value versus good or excellent value is this does face some stiff competition in the mid-tier from other micro brands and other mid-tier brands. But however, there are 2 things that add value to this piece significantly. The brand heritage is one. The first Accutron was released by Bulliver in 1960. It's an iconic piece, the world's first tuning fork electronic watch. This is the direct descendant of it, the Accutron Spaceview 2020. So one has to respect that brand heritage since 1960. That does add value to it. The other thing is the 5 years of international warranty, which I detailed at the start, because the industry standard for mid-tier pieces between €500 and €5,000 is 2 years of international warranty. 5 years is the industry standard for high-tier pieces such as Rolex at €10,000 plus. Very unusual to see 5 years of warranty at €3,750. Again, this adds significant value. So brand heritage is one, 5-year warranty is the other. They do add value. Quality overall is excellent, and the movement alone is reason to purchase this piece. It is iconic, and I really like the heritage. I like visually the look of it. The accuracy, plus or minus 5 seconds per month, is stellar. It's just fantastic, and it's just a great looking piece. But however, Definitely only for larger wrists of 8 inches plus. It's not suitable for 6 to 7 inch wrists due to the thickness and wrist presence at 16.3, 51 lug to lug, and of course 43.5 diameter. One has to be mindful of that. But great looking piece. Finishing is excellent. Build quality, quality control, materials are stellar. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Accutron Spaceview 2020 reference 2ES6A006. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.